half of the Blossoming Fate meta lay behind us. Half lay ahead. And the big question on everyone's mind, what will the balance changes be? Stay tuned. The only thing you really care about is what I actually think will change. Just hop to the end of the video. I'll leave a timestamp in there for you. But for the most part, I want to go through each class, see what may or may not change, and just kind of talk about the cards and whatnot. So let's hop in with the big one on everyone's mind. That's Oluwan. I've had a lot of time to chew this card over now, and I've been on both sides. I've had 2 games where the sword player had it in the bag. They played this, and they hit themselves 3 times in the face and lost. And I've also had games where I won. I won that game, no doubt in my mind, but he had the absolute perfect, or they had the absolute perfect Oluwan and just hit me in the face 3 times despite me having a whole board and 20 health. And if you ask me if I think a 7 cost card should exist that could potentially do 21 damage, I don't think it should. Having said that, I don't think this card will change. I don't think they're going to balance it. I think it kind of is what it is. Yes, it's unfair, but it's not broken enough that it is warping the meta. And I think that's what it comes down to. So, will there be any other sword changes? I highly doubt it. There are a bunch of other broken sword cards like Albert and Sincero, but if they haven't touched them now, they're not going to, especially with this potential alternating, rotating format on the horizon. The strongest class in the game at the moment is Portal. And it is the strongest class because both Eggs and Puppet are really good. And so when you go into that matchup, you're not exactly sure how you should mulligan. Do you need the fast stuff, the early game removal, to deal with Puppets? Or do you need to focus on getting your game plan going to beat Eggs to the punch? What made them such of a threat is all the new stuff in Blossoming Fate. Partly this little bugger right here, Amari Dewdrop. This card is gross. It gets you a spell. It summons tons of birdies. It's really powerful. But ultimately, I think this is a fair card. And I don't think will be changed. The other cards that may be changed are the other cards that make this so broken. Upstart Goblin, as I like to call it, or, Light of the Dewdrop. It's just, you now have a 37 card deck, essentially. And when combined with Amari, it's really powerful. But this is relatively fair still. Sincerity of the Dewdrop, on the other hand, I think this card is evil incarnate. These little birdies haunt my nightmares. Not only can you change anything you want into a birdie, including amulets, but with Amari, you're summoning birds on top of it, so you just get these huge boards for an Evo and a bunch of 1-cost spells that are helping you. So I think that if any card got nerfed, it should be Sincerity Dewdrop. I would like to personally see them remove the ability to transform anything. I think that it can transform amulets is really cheesy and really not cool, but I think a more likely balance change is the card will go to 2 cost. That's just my assumption. Will that break it? Will that make it more fair? And since Amari can pull any spell from your deck, I don't think it would be too unfair to make the Sincerity Dewdrop go to 2, but that's just my prediction or guess, maybe. I think that is the most unfair card in Portal right now. Obviously, it's all 3 of these working together, but Portal wasn't broken until these new cards came out. And they're super splashable and super generic, and that's what makes it so dangerous, because they can just kind of deal with anything now. The kind of final big bad, or at least the last card that the community is really talking about, is Ernest Goes to Dragon School, as I like to call him, but Ernst, Governing Justice. I think the thing that frustrates most people about this card is the fact that it's a Swiss Army knife. I mean, ward, intimidate, heal, direct damage. I mean, it does everything. And the question is, do dragons really need that? And I think the answer is yes. Dragon feels like this archetype that has so many hodgepodge things with discards and intimidates and doing damage to yourself and storm and all these things that don't really jive. So they kind of needed this huge boss monster that just kind of brings it all together. And I think it's fine to have. I think if this were anything but a 10 drop, it would be disgusting. Yeah, ultimately, I just think Ernst is a pretty fair card, and I don't see him getting any changes. I don't see Dragon really getting any changes. I think ultimately the meta's in a pretty good spot, and I don't think there needs to be a huge balance shift. Moving on to Haven, Kukishiro, Birdbrain, Odd Haven, whatever you want to call it. This is definitely the new deck that has taken the meta by storm, as you might say. And I like it. I like the deck a lot. I think it's really fun. I think there is a certain luck-based aspect to it. And I think because there is that random aspect of having to draw and put cards back and having to play only certain numbers, I think the deck is actually fair. Yeah, it can be cheesy at moments, and I had a game today where I just got the perfect amount of birds on my draw, and you just win because of it. But I think it's balanced enough that the deck is not too disgustingly overpowered. I think the reason people are calling for nerfs to the deck is because it is very tedious to play against. If the deck kind of can pop off and get Kukishiro early, you in trouble, boy. It ain't fun to play against. But at the same time, I think, not to sound like a broken record, but the meta's pretty solved. It's pretty fair. It's balanced. And I don't think there will be any changes to Haven. Straight up. I think Haven, Sword, Dragons, I don't think they'll be touched. I think they will just be as is. Alright, since we've already covered some of the more powerful crafts, let's move to some of the crafts that I think might get buffs. And I don't think Belial will receive a buff necessarily, but I think Abyss might receive a buff. The question is, I don't know what that should be because Abyss is pretty powerful. It's kind of right on the cusp of being a top tier deck, but it's just a little underpowered, some of the things we've already talked about. The other thing is when you have a craft that has something like Belial that has an OTK, it begins to be a little more problematic balancing things because you don't want OTKs running around like crazy, right? You want them to have setup. You want them to kind of be niche. So it makes it a little trickier to balance, but we'll see. I think Abysscraft definitely deserves a buff, but you tell me. You let me know in the comments what you think. But I think overall, the game is pretty balanced at the moment, but let's move on. Speaking of crafts that are just kind of bumping up against that tier 1 ceiling, is Rune. Rune has tons of different variations you can play right now. Meme versions, all the way up to Dirt, which is a little more competitive. But I would like to see a boost to this guy, to Truth, and that kind of Rune mechanic. It's kind of fallen to the wayside, like discarding and dragons and stuff like that. Any buff that kind of brings out a new archetype and makes another style of deck more playable would be really fun. So I think we could see a boost to Rune cards, but not the top tier Rune cards. Like, I don't think we're going to see any boost to Dirt or anything like that. But that doesn't mean something isn't on the horizon. And that brings us to our final craft. Some would say the least powerful craft at the moment. Forest is in a really weird place because I think it has so many roads it can go down. You know, Roach combo, Izudia OTK, Rose Queen OTK, Evo Forest, Tempo Fairy. There's so many like bits, but none of them can kind of break through and be the most powerful. You kind of mix them all together and they don't play as well as you kind of hope they do. So I'd very much like to see Forest get a buff. And I think what Forest needs is they need one card that is beyond broken. Every class kind of has one or two cards that's just like feels insane, feels unfair, that are just kind of auto includes in every deck. And I think Forest needs that. Now, what should that be? Well, I'm thinking something maybe like this, the Dancing Duo. I think this is the card that we need to make absolutely broken for Forest, because this card can be teched into a lot of things. It boosts the Evo strategy. It helps a lot of other strats. And the card's already really good, but it's not insane. It's not crazy broken. And I think the way to fix that is to remove the super Evo part of it. Just on Evolve. Now, I know what you're saying. That's pretty crazy. That's essentially, 12 free Evos in a game? 9 if you don't really think about it that much. But, I mean, come on, man. Forest needs it. Forest is in a really poor spot, and I think it needs an absolute boost. But yeah, again, let me know what you think. Do you want to see a Forest buff? It can be hard to balance around the Azudia and the Rose Queen OTK. And I think this is a pretty safe way to do that. But let me know down in the comments. Okay, if you just hopped here from the end, long story short, I know too late, I don't think much is going to change. I think maybe Forest gets a buff, but that's pretty much it. They're not going to hit dragons. They're not going to hit Oluwan. They're not going to mess with Portal. I don't think it's too broken. I'd like to see Sincerity of the Dewdrop maybe increase in cost, but I doubt that'll happen. In terms of buffs, I'd like to see Forest get a buff, specifically Yule, the Dancing Duo. I think would be a pretty safe card to buff up. Maybe there's a world where we get like a Truth Rune boost, but it's unlikely. The devs don't like to change too much. Usually it's 2 or 3 cards. That's just my quick predictions. But having said all that, thank you so much for watching. Do all the YouTube stuff. Be safe out there and think about your own mental health and taking care of yourself. Things are really crazy lately. Much love, y'all. Farewell.